Welcome to Super Talk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride. Good to go?
Good to go.
YouTube. Big showing. Thank you so much for watching. Good show today. Episode 4, Moon Knight, and what the fuck is going on with Sony? Alright. Professor, you ready, sir?
Let's go.
Like a gentleman. Look at him. And 3.
Welcome to Super Talk, the weekly podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode number 67. I'm your host, Brian Professor Pettiston. With me, as always, is my illustrious co-host, the Titanium one, Tony Estrella Titanium.
Mazel tov. How are you, sir?
Cheers.
Cheers to you. Yeah. Things going well?
Yeah.
We got an exciting show. We're going to kind of break down and give our opinions on episode 4.
I think the confusion of what the hell is going on Moon Knight is at an all-time high. We'll try to break it down. We'll try to explain it. We'll try to give our best guesses at what could be going on. But man, it was quite the episode.
Yeah, it was kind of psychedelic, kind of freaky. But yeah, I think we got a pretty good handle on it. We'll give it our best shot, as usual. Got a lot of phone calls. And then we're going to talk about what the fuck is going on with Sony. Jesus, Sony, are they just... something's going on.
You know, and we'll get into it. I don't want to get into it yet, but I do think it's actually a positive thing. So
that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got that opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so let's get the show started, and then I'll get into it.
All right, well, first we want to thank the patrons. These are the listeners that bring the show to you. Patreon.com/supertalk. Donate $1 for every episode we come out with, and you become a patron. Titanium has some swag that he's dying to get rid of, and if you join the Patreon anytime in the next 3 weeks, he's going to be shipping some swag to you, which is going to cost us a lot more than the $1 you're giving us. So anything you do to help us out, we really appreciate it. Patreon.com/supertalk. Well, let's jump right into Moon Knight episode 4. Like I mentioned this to you earlier this week. I think for some people were unaware of what was going on the show through the first 3 episodes. They were confused. Yeah. And then episode 4 came out, and they were like...
And threw him through a window.
I have no idea what the hell was going on.
Yeah. We've been, especially novice, people that don't know the comic books, have been absolutely like, what's going on? Wait, who's who? And I don't know if that is a symptom of the show not describing it well enough, or they're just assuming that Moon Knight fans will know what's going on. Now, some people that don't know anything about Moon Knight kind of grasp it and kind of get what's going on until episode 4. And we had discussed earlier, and I had said, and you had said, I think you had told me that I think Moon Knight jumped the shark. And I was like, I don't think so.
Not for me, but I think for some people it did.
For some people. And so what I did is I hit social media. I took to social media and put a lot of polls out there on Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat and Facebook. And there were a few people that were like, yeah, it's too crazy. I'm lost. I can't figure it out. But a majority of the people hit the button, I want to see what happens next. And no, it hasn't jumped the shark yet. It's so interesting. So I think that's, granted, it's a very small sample size, but I think that people are more now intrigued to find out what the hell is going on, because it was crazy.
Well, just to update people on, so where did the term "jump the shark" come from? And it's really comes from Happy Days.
It's funny you say that because somebody on Twitter
what does it mean? Jump the shark. So I'll explain it. So back in there was a television show back in the 70s called Happy Days, fantastic television show.
Henry Winkler.
Yeah, one of the biggest stars of the show was Henry Winkler, Fonzie, and in one episode he decided to jump this old drive-in movie theater called The Shark, and that's the reason why it's called Jumping the Shark, on his motorcycle. And he puts on this like Evel Knievel outfit, and jumps over this movie theater.
Well, they had built up to it several episodes.
Oh yeah, talking about who's going to be the first one to jump the shark,
Yeah.
you know, and Fonzie's like, no, I'm not going to do it, you know, whatever. But so the reason why this term is a term is because ever since that happened on the show took a significant downward spiral from there and was never the same. It was never as good again.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, ever since they jumped the shark, the show's just been terrible.
Yeah.
And so now that's a term we use to describe television shows or television series, that there's a crescendo or a point in the show where all of a sudden everything goes down. I mean,
Yeah,
it's bad after that.
Yeah.
You know, there's countless examples. You know, Game of Thrones. You know, jumped the shark after, you know, the ice dragon. You know, became the dragon became the ice dragon, and they talk about. You know, Lost was one of the shows. There was one episode in one season finale where like, oh my god, really? We're doing this now?
Yeah.
Where they like went back in time, and it's like, oh, this show's completely jumped the shark.
Yeah.
So it's a term we use to describe a show that had momentum and was doing very well. Then all of a sudden something happens, and it's just, okay, you've lost me.
Yeah.
And the reason why I said that to you was, you know, so my wife Betsy is a, I'll say, pseudo fan of these movies. She likes certain ones better than the others, nowhere near as much as I do, but she entertains them because she knows, you know, my son and I and my daughter love them as much as we do. While she was watching Moon Knight, she was kind of confused, really didn't know what was going on. And
Right.
you and I have discussed this in previous episodes. Moon Knight is a brand new character for anybody who's not a comic book fan. Brand new to the MCU.
Yeah.
You've never seen this character before, knew nothing about this character. Oscar Isaac, fantastic actor, was cast to play this character, and to this point, he'd done a fantastic job. And I think the fact that he has multiple personalities, and so think about it, we've got a character with multiple personalities, and they really didn't explain that he had multiple personalities, but they were like jumping back and forth between different people, and wait a minute, who are these Egyptian gods, and what's this all about? So it was very confusing. And then all of a sudden, this episode happened, and my wife looked at me, she says, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, she tolerated up to a point where it's like, okay, I think I kind of can figure some of it out. It's entertaining. And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I'm done now. I have no idea what's going on.
I think it's going to be like WandaVision, where it was just so bizarre and crazy. You're like, what? Where are they? Where is she? She's back in time in an old movie show. I mean, an old television show. What's going on? And then every episode she was in. So it was very hard to kind of follow. And then they kind of tied it all together. And I think in episode 5 and 6 they're going to tie it all together. Okay, let's just get this off our chest, people. Seriously. It was a fucking dream sequence, okay? The whole previous part of the show is happening in his head. Come on. It has to be. I mean, I'm gonna bet the farm on it. I'm gonna bet the farm that it's a dream
there's
sequence.
a bunch of, you know, theories, and we can kind of break each one of them down.
If it's not a dream sequence, then how is Steven and Mark existing in the same plane? Are they twins?
Well, let's get there when we get there. So we'll kind of describe. And I think, and this is what threw a lot of people, is that the first 50 minutes or 47 minutes of the episode were a normal Moon Knight episode, and then all of a sudden we got this end sequence, right? And they were like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
Right? And so let's kind of like figure out how we got here. So we start the episode right after the end of the third episode, where Steven had been, helped by Khonshu, was able to turn back the night sky, and they were able to use the map that they had gotten from the sarcophagus, and were able to locate Amit's tomb.
Yep.
And Khonshu was then, at that point in time, banished by the gods. And we saw what the gods were doing. They got in a room together holding hands, and they were chanting something, and then
They imprisoned him in a stone statue.
Right. Those stone statues are called Ushabti. So they saw the stone statue become whole inside of the Great Pyramid, and then Khonshu was no longer existing on this plane. We started this episode with a scene of the Avatar of Osiris bringing Khonshu's statue into a room and putting it on a shelf, and there were Ushabti for many other Egyptian gods on the shelf. So
that's
many Egyptian gods
have been punished,
have been banished to some extent. And And so that was a surprise to us that this was not just a punishment they had levied upon Khonshu, but many others before him. And it seems like they have to work together to do this. So
yeah, not just the 4 that were missing from the trial.
Right, because we saw 4 empty seats. You know, so the Aeneid is supposed to be 9 seats, and 4 of those seats were empty.
9 god deities, yeah.
Right, and we had 5 people there, and so 4 of them were like, where are the other 4? And we don't know. Maybe some of them were ones that had been banished already. Right. So the question then becomes, well, did the 5 left in the Aeneid decide upon themselves they wanted power and influence, and they wanted to control things, and so they banished all these other gods so that they would be in control? Do they have their own agenda? Yeah. Is this something that... So we don't know. No. We have no idea.
By the way, there are more than just 9 gods. There are a ton of Egyptian gods.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Egyptian gods. Yeah.
But there were only 9 on the Aeneid, which is the...
Aeneid, that's the power group, right?
Right. It's like the Mount Olympus. It's like, there's plenty of Greek gods, but there's only certain ones that are on Mount Olympus.
They're the board of directors for...
Right, exactly. I mean...
the Egyptian gods.
That's what it comes down to, right? So the question is, are they power hungry? Do they have an agenda? And is it possible, and this is one of the questions that I started asking myself, is that, okay, Arthur Harrow, who used to be the avatar of Khonshu, now supposedly the avatar of Ammit, is he working on Ammit's behalf because Ammit was unjustifiably banished?
Right.
Or is Arthur Harrow working on behalf of one of the other gods who wants to free Ammit for their own purpose?
Right.
So, for example, when you pass away, Egyptian lore says when you die, you go to the fields of grass, and then that's where your heart is weighed. And it's Anubis that is the one that weighs your heart on the scales. And if your heart is heavier than a feather, then you go to the underworld. And if it's lighter than a feather, then you're able to go to heaven, basically. And if your heart is heavier than the feather, then you're fed to Ammit, basically. Your soul is fed to Ammit, and Ammit is the one who feeds on your soul.
Right.
Ammit's not the one that does the judging.
Right.
It's Anubis that does the judging. So the question is Arthur Harrow working for Anubis, and Anubis is the one that wants to free Ammit? Or is he working for Ammit, knowing that Ammit's been imprisoned and falsely or unjustifiably and wants to free Ammit? That made me question that. And here's the other big question, Titanium. And I think we're going to see this in the next episode, and this is one of my theories about what was happening at the end of this episode. If Ammit is in Anushanti, is imprisoned, how is Arthur Harrow able to summon the power from Ammit? How is Arthur Harrow able to use Ammit's power as its avatar? Because we saw Khonshu was banished, and theoretically, Mark and Steven no longer had the powers of the Moon Knight that were granted to them by Khonshu because Khonshu was banished. So if Khonshu's banished and they no longer have the access to the suit, and the powers of Moon Knight, well, how does Arthur Harrow have powers? Because his god is banished right now. Right. So where's he drawing this power from?
Not from Ammit. No, you're absolutely correct. I agree with you 100%.
Or
as soon as you saw that statue, you realize, well, wait a minute. If Khonshu is confined in a stone statue, and Ammit is confined, shoved down the throat of...
Which we saw in the episode, right?
Right. How is he communicating, or how is that just a sliver of Ammit's power?
Right, if he's the avatar of Ammit, how is Ammit communicating with him? Because he's banished. Khonshu can't communicate with Mark or Steven anymore.
It speaks volumes of Ethan Hawke in his portrayal of this character. Absolute fantastic.
Yeah, but I have a theory that we might see in the next episode of what might really be going on here, and we'll kind of get into that when we get into that end scene.
The producer did say episode 5 and 6 is very dark, and it will blow your minds away, more so than episode 4.
Well, and
that would really
stays true to all of the limited 6-episode series we've seen from Disney Plus thus far. The end of episode 4 has always been an oh my god moment.
Yeah.
So in WandaVision, the end of episode 4. We saw the Sword Control Center watching WandaVision, the WandaVision TV show on their TVs, right? Yeah. We saw a scene of that.
They were monitoring it.
We're like, oh, okay, now we kind of see what's going on. We saw that. In episode 4 of Falcon and Winter Soldier, we had, U.S. Agent basically smash a Flag Smasher's face with the shield, right?
With Captain America's
shield, right? Mm-hmm. So we saw that happen in episode 4. In episode 4 of Hawkeye, we had Yelena Belova show up on the rooftop. You know, and that was so. There's always been one of these oh my god moments at the end of each one of these episode 4s. Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, and the end of episode 4 of Loki, he ends up in the other world with the crocodile version of Loki, you know, and that was the end of that episode. So we've had these moments in these series before. So I think they use that as kind of a way to kind of bridge to the kind of finale of the of the series, right?
Right.
So it was something we expected, but how they went about it, it was very strange. And again, And I think we'll do this when we get to the end, but I think we need to break down that ending into 2 different sections, and we'll kind of talk through that. But anyway, we start the episode that way. Layla, Mark, or Steven at the time, is completely unresponsive, and now there's a truck driving up on them, shooting at them, and this is the dead of night in the desert, so you can't see anything, but they're able to roll down some dune behind the truck that they drove up in, and Stevens just can't even move, and this truck is hunting them down and trying to shoot at them, and Layla's able to use a flare that she gets from the back of the truck, her truck, throws it in the back of this, this gun-touting vehicle that's got a box of open ammo, and it just goes off and, surprisingly kills the 2 of them and doesn't kill her or Mark, which is kind of crazy, but and then Steven ends up standing up and he's okay, so we were under the impression that he might not, that since he died, and we think that he died before and Khonshu revived him, that if Khonshu was banished, that he was not going to be revived. Well, he did get revived.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Still alive.
Are you getting major Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They totally.
The Mummy, Raider and the Lost Arks. It's so
totally
great.
Drawing on all those movies.
So it's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it.
And so then Mark and Layla, Steven and Layla are driving off towards the Tomb of Ammit, that they used the map that they found to locate it. And they're driving there. We get this conversation between the 2 of them that, and Steven tells Layla that Mark was trying to protect her, that Ammit wanted, that Khonshu wanted her for his next avatar, and she's like, well, that's...
Mark didn't have the balls to tell her, but Steven came right out and was honest with her. I think she appreciated it.
Right. They get to the Tomb of Ammit. They see Harrow's equipment there, so they had set up a camp there, and all their equipment is there, but nobody's around. Yeah. Surprisingly, nobody's there. And they're like, well, let's go get some supplies. They grab a few supplies. She grabs a couple of extra flares, which we find out are very useful going forward, but they end up making their way into the tomb. Right before, though, she's like, you smell like him. Obviously, Steven looks and smells like Mark, and she goes in to kiss him, and then he kind of pushes away. He's not really sure about it.
And that's when he reveals what Khonshu's plan was, and the reason why Mark's trying to protect her in the situation.
Right. And then he ends up kissing her, and it was awkward.
Sure it was.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they end up going down into the tomb, and they discover that the Tomb of Ammit is in the shape of a maze. It's a maze, and they're not really sure what direction they're supposed to go to. And Steven's able to figure out it's in the shape of the Eye of Anubis, which is a very prevalent Egyptian symbol.
Right.
And he's like, well, Ammit would have been the pharaoh who's buried here. They believe they're in the tomb of a pharaoh, and they're saying the pharaoh that was buried here would have been the voice of Ammit. So we're going to go down the tongue, which is the part of the Eye of Anubis that they go down. And so they make their way into some old, looks like a crypt, like a table where they would prep bodies for burial. And there was these old priests that had been mummified and kept there because they were there to guard the bodies of the people in the crypt. And then we get our Egyptian zombie moment, right? Where, Mark goes up on top, or Steven goes up on top on another level, and he's looking down, and something walks into the room, and they hear gunshots. They're like, what could they be shooting at? Yeah. And this zombie walks in, drags a body in, throws it on the table, and just starts pulling organs out. We're like, holy crap.
It's definitely a guardian of the tomb, and one of the priests, the undead priests that guard the tomb. It was very bizarre. It was kind of scary.
And it ends up trying to chase Steven, but then Layla kind of convinces it to chase after her, and then she's escaping into some, ledge that's overlooking this massive pit. And
very Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, the thing grabs her a couple times, and it was just like the jump scares and all the other stuff, and she pulls its arm off, but then it's trying to stab her with its like disembodied bone. But she ends up, able to defeat it and throw it over the ledge when she stabs it in the eye with one of her flares. It was just a weird moment. I was just like, it was just strange to me. I mean, I was like, okay, all right. But then Arthur Harrow shows up on the other side of the chasm and tells her that, I knew your father.
Right.
So he knew who her father was, Egyptian archaeologist, and said, you should ask your husband what happened to him, how he died. He's
back on that. He's back on that.
Well, he's said, I weigh, I put his soul on the scales, and he's carrying a lot of anger and resentment and frustration, and you should ask him. He has some information about how your father died. And Layla's like, whatever, I'm leaving you. So she goes and goes off to find Steven. By the way, Steven now has made his way into the tomb of this pharaoh, and we're not sure what pharaoh to use. I think it's one of the big ones. I think it's a big one.
Yeah.
We'll come to find out it's the tomb of Alexander the Great. Yeah.
Which to this day is still a mystery.
They don't know where it is.
And a lot of people are still looking for that. A lot of people announce, we found the great tomb, and it ends up being nothing. So still yet to be found.
The writing on the tomb itself was Mesopotamian. And Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors, in history, was from Mesopotamia. He ended up conquering North Egypt, founded the city of Alexandria, and was known as a pharaoh of Egypt. Yeah. Right, so people believe that he was entombed somewhere around Alexandria. Nobody really knows where he is, as Titanium mentioned, but they claim to now have found the tomb of Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great was theoretically now the former avatar of Ammit. So the theory is that Ammit granted Alexander the Great his power, which allowed him to be such a dominant conqueror of lands and worlds back in the day. And now we know who the former avatar of Ammit was, and that betrayed Ammit. And when Ammit was imprisoned into an Ushabti, it was buried with Alexander the Great. And Stephen kind of figures out that, they would have hid it somewhere that some normal tomb raider wouldn't be able to find it, and it was stuck down the throat of the corpse of Alexander the Great.
The mummy.
Right.
Yeah.
He's able to pull the Ushabti out, so they've got it. It's just like a little statue of Ammit, very similar to the one we saw of Khonshu in the previous episode. And he's got it. And then he's like, hey, we got it. Layla shows up, and she's like,
pissed.
You angry? I want to talk to Mark. Can he hear me? I mean, he needs to answer for this, And so and then Mark takes over the body and says, look, we got to get the hell out of here. They're chasing us. And she's like, no, you need to answer for what's going on. I mean, it's like, seriously, get the hell out of the tomb and then do this.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then Mark's like, look, I was a mercenary. I worked for a guy. He got out of control.
My partner got greedy.
Yep, got greedy, decided to take it all for himself. And he killed everyone.
But no word of who the partner is or anything like that. It's still a mystery. We don't know if it's Raoul Bushman or
it was
Jake Lockley, maybe.
It was Bushman in the comics, right? We know that for sure. We don't know who it could be. Mm-hmm. But he's like, look, everybody was killed, including me. I should have died that night, but I didn't.
Khonshu saved me. Yeah.
Well, he didn't say that, but that's what we believe as, that was the night that he died, and that Khonshu offered him,
the deal.
Yeah, I'll save your life in exchange for your servitude. So we believe that's what happened. But then, all of a sudden, Arthur Harrow shows up with all of his men, and is like, hey, you need to hand over the Ushabti, and Mark's like, no, and he grabs the axe out of the tomb and kills a couple of them, and then Arthur Harrow grabs the gun of one of the guys and just shoots Mark in the chest.
Yeah, he made that statement again. I can't save those who don't want to save themselves.
Yep, I can't help somebody who won't help themselves, right? And so shoots him twice in the chest, and we get the scene from the trailer where he falls back into the water. Now, it's very clear when he falls back into the water that it's like 2 inches deep.
Yeah, it's not very deep.
But then all of a sudden, we get a scene of him like falling down deeper and deeper into the water. Yes. And we're like, well, where's he going? And then all of a sudden, we see a light in the middle of the screen, and then it pans out, and we're watching a VHS movie, a knockoff of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
Tomb Busters.
Right. It's some kid and some doctor or professor.
Dr. Stephen Grant.
Right.
The archaeologist.
Hunting the looking for the remains of the Mayan moon goddess.
Yeah.
Right. So this, so what I'll say is when we get into the now, and Mark's sitting in a wheelchair,
heavily sedated
in white clothes, now he's in a mental hospital. The entire mental hospital is populated with everybody that we've seen in the shows thus far.
Well, not just populated with everybody, but references on the walls and
to everything
props,
we've seen.
Everything we've seen.
So the first half of when we're in the mental hospital, the first half of it, we all are being led to believe that maybe everything up until this point has been something that he was in his mind,
yes.
that had been made up, that he was a dream sequence
right.
that he was having,
right.
and that all the adventures he had been on with Layla and Stephen and Mark and Moon Knight and being hunted by Arthur Harrow, that this was something he had just made up, because all the references we were seeing in this mental hospital were basically things that we had seen in the show. All the characters that he had interacted with on the show were in the mental hospital,
his
either
boss,
patients
or orderlies.
Or the two orderlies were the two police officers that worked for Arthur Harrow. The guy who was in the gold, who was street performer, who's all painted gold, was the guy yelling out the bingo numbers.
Yeah.
His boss
was a patient.
She was a patient
with a stuffed scarab she was holding on to.
Somebody was drawing a picture of a bird that had the face of Ahmed on it, and we're like, is everything that he's seen? And at one point in time, we see Layla, and she's a patient there too, and they have some relationship. But he wins bingo, but she takes the prize on his behalf. Say, well, I'll let you have half of it this time. I won, but I'll let you have half, right? And then he sees his reflection in a glass. And he says, Steven. So he's trying to talk to Steven, thinking that they can speak still. And there's no answer. And he tries to get out of the wheelchair, and he's tied to the wheelchair by an ankle restraint and falls on his face, very similar to how he did in that one episode when he tried to get out of bed.
Yeah.
And so we're all being led to believe, well, maybe this is just stuff that he's been experiencing while in the mental hospital.
What mental hospital is that clean and that pearly white? Come on.
Well, so again, what we as the audience are being led to believe is maybe all of this stuff was something in his mind. Maybe he was making all of this up.
That's what they wanted you to believe. They wanted you to open the door of that storyline.
And then he gets wheeled, and he's heavily sedated. He gets wheeled into Arthur Harrow's office, and Ethan Hawke is there as the head doctor of this mental facility. And he's got a cane. He's wearing the same sandals. There's a painting on the wall of the town in Europe that he was in the first episode. And we're like, all this stuff, is it all part of his head? Is it all in his head? And then all of a sudden he's just like, hang on a second. This doesn't add up. You could see he's like kind of trying to figure. He's like, you shot me.
Yeah.
The last thing you shot me.
Yeah.
And then he gets up. He's able to get up out of the chair, and he's obviously very heavily sedated, and he's trying to fight it off. He's able to get out of the room, and the two orderlies come in. And he's able to, knock them down.
Yeah.
Gets out of the room, hides in a room, and he hides in this room. And at this point in time, I was like, okay, this isn't what we think it is, because there's now an Egyptian sarcophagus in this room,
inside of it,
and somebody's knocking on it and screaming.
That's what led you to believe. Come on.
Well, but up until that point, they were trying to get us to.
They were trying,
right? But he opens it up, and Steven pops out.
Yeah.
And they're like, hug each other, like, oh my God.
Straight from the comics.
Right. Steven, oh my God, Steven.
There's a Moon Knight run of a comic that this this whole mental hospital is based on it, and it's awesome.
They walk by, so they get out. Oh, and there's at one point in time, like the lamps on the ceiling were like swinging back and forth.
The whole room was shifting, which it's another telltale.
Yeah, right. And they walk by another room that has another sarcophagus in it, and it's like jumping up and down. And they're like, hey, let's not open that one. Let's leave that one.
Well, they don't even say anything. They just walk through it.
We believe that that's Jake Lockley, the other personality.
Their other personality. They know nothing about.
Right, because the scene from the previous episode where Mark's holding a knife, and he says, Steven, what did you do? And Steven's like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so somebody had killed the kid, right?
I think we're going to see Jake Lockley very shortly.
For sure. And then the two of them are walking down the hallway. They're trying to get out. They get to these double doors, and the double doors open, and we see this giant hippo in Egyptian clothing. And they look at her, and
with
she's like,
human hands.
Yep, she says, hi.
Yeah.
And they both scream, and the episode ends.
Yeah.
So, again, let's talk about, because I think what people want to hear about our theories on the last kind of 10 minutes of the show in this mental hospital. I think the first half of that was the show's attempt to get us to believe or
Correct.
think that maybe everything we had seen up until this point was all in his mind and he had been making it up.
Yeah.
And then, once he kind of got out of Harrow's office and stuff started happening and he found Steven, and we were like, okay, something's not right here.
No one plays bingo like that either. I mean,
Right,
he called out like T44. There's no T in bingo.
Right, B43 or something,
on.
right? You know, there's no B43,
No,
right?
no,
It's
no.
only B1 through 15, right?
Right.
So, yeah, something was weird. And so now there's all kinds of what's going on. So you referenced kind of the Moon Knight comic books. So in the
Which, by the way, that's a kick-ass comic you have from your collection.
Oh, yeah,
there.
awesome.
Moon Knight comic up here on the show's desk. That's awesome.
So in the comic books, there was a run where Steven was in, or Mark was in a mental institution.
Yeah.
Because he was being told by all the doctors that everything that had happened to him, everything that was happening to him was all related to his DID and all of his multiple personalities. And the comic book itself would go through, like you'd see, very similar to what happened in the show. You'd have several pages of an adventure of Moon Knight and Khonshu working together to go do something or defeat somebody, and then you'd have several pages of him in the mental hospital.
Yeah.
Then you'd have several pages of him as Moon Knight again. And so it was going back and forth. So they did this for several issues of the comics, and then eventually we found out that there was this inner battle in his mind between himself and all of his multiple personalities, that they were always constantly fighting with each other, and that Khonshu had actually manufactured this sequence of him it was all in his head,
To control him.
basically manufactured this sequence of him in the mental hospital to get him to start working with his alternate personality instead of them fighting with each other all the time.
Right.
And only once they agreed to work together were they able to break out of this kind of mental prison that Khonshu had them in, and then they went back to being Moon Knight full time. So that, I think, is the most obvious, because Marvel does draw from comic book stories, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's what they're doing, that they're now in this place because it's something they have to come to grips with their multiple personalities, and they have to find a way to work with each other so that they can, get out of this and get back to the real world.
Yeah.
and recover.
Because
right?
there is a real world, people. This is definitely, as far as I'm concerned, it's a dream sequence.
So one of the big questions people have asked is, who's the hippo, right? So the hippo is another one of the Egyptian gods.
Yes.
It's the Egyptian goddess Taweret, Taweret, I believe, Taweret.
Mm-hmm.
She's the Egyptian goddess of
fertility
and resurrection. Or not resurrection, recovery or something.
Rebirth.
Yeah. Fertility and rebirth. She's basically the goddess that protects pregnant mothers and newborn children and all kinds of other things, right? So the question is, what role is she going to play? I have a lot of theories about this, and I don't necessarily believe that we're only in Mark's mind right now.
Okay.
I think we may be in the Egyptian version of Limbo, which is between their version of heaven and their version of hell.
Like a purgatory.
Mm-hmm. And that's where he went when Arthur Harrow shot him, that's where he is. And it just happens to be where all the other Egyptian gods that have been imprisoned are residing at the moment.
Interesting.
So when the other gods of the Ennead decide to imprison an Egyptian god, they basically do their incantations, and then they create the Ushabti, and it's trapped there. But the gods themselves are trapped in this purgatory. And I believe that's where they are. They're in purgatory, and in purgatory, all of the things around him are being developed by his mind, but the Egyptian gods are all there, and it's possible that Khonshu's even there.
Possible that Ammit is there, if that theory is correct.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Now, the other theory I have is, we mentioned earlier, it's amazing that Arthur Harrow is drawing power from somewhere. He's getting power from what he says is Ammit. And what he said. Now, if Ammit is imprisoned, then either he still has access to the power that Ammit gave him while Ammit's imprisoned, and that doesn't cancel that out, or he's being empowered by somebody else. I think it's the former, and I believe we're going to get to a point where Mark will realize that as soon as he and his other personalities can work together, they can escape this, because Khonshu has already resurrected him once, and he can continue to resurrect him as many times as he wants to, and this is now Khonshu basically trying to get him to get his personalities to work together, and as soon as they do, he's going to get him resurrected, and he'll wake up again back in the tomb, resurrected,
right?
And he'll realize that even though Khonshu's imprisoned, I still have access to his power, have access to the Moon Knight, the suit, and all the powers that he granted me. Just because he's in prison doesn't... I just thought that that's what happened, and that's why I never tried to access them.
Right.
Because, again, why would Arthur Harrow have all the power that he has if Ammit's in prison and he can't free him?
So that would make sense. If Ammit is truly imprisoned, then Arthur Harrow has been driven by another god and is an avatar for somebody else trying to free Ammit. If it's the other way around, that Ammit is imprisoned, but yet he can still draw power from Ammit and
as his avatar,
with the cane and everything, then that would make sense. Then so could Mark Spector.
Right, and I think
that would close that whole loophole, that plot hole.
And I think Taweret will be playing, and we understand the actress playing the voice of Taweret in the show is credited in the next 2 episodes. So we believe that Taweret will be in the next 2 episodes. And I believe her role in all this is to help Mark understand where he is, what's going on, and how he can get out.
Yeah.
And to basically provide him with assistance. He says,
not like Khonshu did, because he's a dick. I mean, he's just like, do my bidding, figure it out. He's so beyond explaining to people.
Right. I think Taweret will be kind of like the voice of reason, will be, look, there's many of us that are imprisoned here. I'm just one of many gods that are imprisoned here. Khonshu's in prison. A bunch of us are in prison here. You're here not because you should be here, but because you need to find a way to get out.
Right.
And here's your way out.
Right.
You, Mark, and Steven, and Jake all need to figure out how to work together and come to some agreement amongst yourselves on the best way forward.
Yeah.
And once you do, and you're able to harness your kind of combined, mental powers across all of you in the right way, you'll be able to escape this place. And oh, by the way, you still have access to the gifts that Khonshu gave you. You just didn't know it.
Yeah.
And because we have seen scenes of Moon Knight in future episodes, so we know he comes back.
He's fighting Arthur Harrow on top of a pyramid. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my theory about what's going on.
No, it's good. I'm right there with you. Mine deviated a little bit from that, but very similar. I do think we're going to see Jake Lockley in that third sarcophagus. I think they're going to bring that out very soon. I also think, which would be very cool and kind of badass, if those jump scenes from when he blacked out and stuff, in episode 5, we kind of get an insight on what happened in those jump scenes. And maybe we get a whole backstory on Jake Lockley at that point and kind of introduce him that way. So when
through the flashbacks of previous things that happened in the show.
Well, like him and Mark took over the body and went on this mission, but he took over Mark's body, and Mark was unaware of it. and Jake Lockley is kind of doing things on his own. I think we're going to hopefully find out. That would be badass if we did. But I think we're going to get some really big answers. A couple of things.
They have to clear this up within the first 10 minutes of the episode next week.
Or they're going to lose
people. They're going to lose people. Yeah. Because they have to really explain the hippo needs to explain what the hell's going on and why she's there.
Yeah.
That has to happen really, really quick in the next episode.
I think we're going to get Jake Lockley. I think we're going to find out exactly what you're talking about. I think maybe Arthur Harrold is pulling power from Amit, and even though she's entombed and can't release the full force of her power on the world, and that's why he wants to free her. But I kind of agree with you a lot there. I also think that we got to get, and I don't want to just see him in an end credit scene, Werewolf by Night. I think they need to introduce that character. There's rumors that Layla, since she was not really the true character in the comics of his wife and girlfriend, she could be the Scarlet Scarab, which is what the little scarab is, what her father called her a lot. And that's another character in the comic book. It was a guy, but maybe they're gender swapping it out for her. I think she plays a bigger role in this than what we've been led to see. At least that's my theory on this. But I think those would be two cool things. But you're right. They have to answer some questions in 5, the very beginning of 5. Like, who's Henrietta Hippo? And why is Henrietta Hippo talking to me?
Right.
I think you're right. They have to kind of explain.
I don't want to go down the road too far on theories about Werewolf by Night and potentially Ghost Rider coming in and potentially, the Red Scarab and all these other things. I don't want to go down that road simply because we've done that so many times in previous series that Disney Plus has come out with.
Agreed.
And none of them have come to fruition.
Yeah.
And I want to be very careful about theorizing. And it is what the internet does, and is what everybody who's looking at these shows does. She could be the Scarlet Scarab, and it's like, hang on a second, guys.
Yeah.
Really, do you want to introduce a brand new character into a show that's got 2 episodes left?
There's no way.
I just want to, measure our expectations.
Oh, by the way, measuring your expectations without having a confirmation of season 2 at all,
or what the future of this character is.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, they do need to clear this up very quickly in the first 15 minutes of the show next week, and hopefully we then get back to real world, and we're now hunting down Arthur Harrow and trying to,
Now,
stop.
I will not tell Betsy. I will not tell your wife. But are you still into the show?
Oh, I've always been into it.
Okay.
It didn't jump the shark for me, but it did for her for sure. But I've never had a problem with it. Yeah. It was definitely a very strange way to end the episode. And again, I think they did it for lots of different reasons. But I'm saying they got to, even for me, you got to clear this up quick.
Yeah.
If he's going to spend 45 minutes in a mental hospital
with no answers,
with no answers to what's going on, I'm going to be like, what the? Yeah. I think it'll be very quick. Yeah. I think they'll get back to the real stuff very quickly.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to it. Check out our next podcast and our next YouTube show on episode 5. We'll dig into it again.
Yeah, we got 2 more, so let's do it. Look, we've said this. We've got the season finale of Moon Knight and our review of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness during the same episode in 2 weeks. Yeah. So that's going to be quite an episode. Yeah,
it's a lot to cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys might want to get popcorn and a drink.
Strap in.
And go to the bathroom before you start the show.
Strap in. All right, well, let's jump into the news section.
Yeah.
A few things this week. We did confirmation. Actress Laura Donnelly, she was in some show on Amazon Prime or Netflix. I can't remember the name of it. It was about this group of witches that, I can't remember the name of it.
The Order.
No, it was something else. Something similar to that, though. I think was it The Order?
I thought it was.
Anyway, she's in a show. She was cast in an unknown role with Marvel. We don't know what she was cast. Well, now we got final confirmation this week that the role she's going to be playing is Elsa Bloodstone.
Yeah.
in the Werewolf by Night series that's coming, or limited series, or one shot, or we don't know what it is yet, that's supposed to be coming this October. We know there's a Werewolf by Night special coming to Disney Plus, but she's been cast in the role of Elsa Bloodstone. This is extremely exciting for me because Elsa Bloodstone was an instrumental character in the Midnight Suns run that they did in the comic books. She was like one of the main characters in the Midnight Suns, and I'm like, oh my god! So she's a demon hunter. She is somebody that hunts supernatural villains and things, and so we won't get into her character's backstory and history and all kinds of other stuff. But the fact that this character is going to be showing up in that Werewolf by Night series leads me to believe they do have some grand plans for this Midnight Suns team of superheroes that are fighting against supernatural threats. Which makes me really excited, and it makes me excited for the future of Moon Knight. I mean, I think this is a place that or a part of the MCU that Moon Knight can play is in that Midnight Suns, and so we've talked about this and theorized about this. Werewolf by Night, Elsa Bloodstone, Doctor Strange, Moon Knight, Ghost Rider, the Punisher. I mean, these are all characters that had at one point in time had been part of the Midnight Suns. And so, Blade and the Black Knight potentially joining that I mean, this is just it's opening up some possibilities here, which would be really cool. So the fact that we've got confirmation that character is going to be showing up is great. So I don't want to talk about the delay for Spider-Man yet, because we'll talk about that in our topic of the week. But Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was banned in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, because American Chavez is portrayed as a gay character, and
would you call her LMNOP?
Yeah, she's part of the LMNOP community. Yep. But yeah, she's portrayed as a gay character, which I don't understand why. But they banned the Eternals as well because there was a gay character there. They just won't have it. Well, their loss, because they're missing out on some tremendous movies. But you know what? Religion is religion. We'll keep it out.
Yeah, I just think they don't tolerate any portrayal of homosexuality in any of their properties that they have in the country. So I mean, it's been banned there. And again, I mean, following along, why Eternals was banned there as well. So not surprised at all. But to your point, the only people it's affecting are the people in Saudi Arabia. Right?
Agree. Yeah, it's not like it's a China market where when Eternals didn't show in there, they probably missed out on about $200-300 million.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that's a huge market for Marvel. I mean, I don't know.
China?
No, Saudi Arabia.
Oh, I don't know. The Middle East as a whole.
But
it's pretty well.
Yeah, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And then you had said something about the Thor Love and Thunder confirmation, right? So what did Thor Love and Thunder come out and confirm?
We talked about it a little bit in our previous podcast. In the comics, Jane Foster, Thor's love interest, gets cancer, whether it was from either having the ether in her or...
Well, that didn't happen in the comics.
Yeah, but in this story, whether that happens... because she had it in her or naturally it's confirmed that that's what's going to happen. They're going to give her cancer, or apparently she has cancer, and she's going to go to the Hammer to become the Mighty Thor and get
so the Mighty Thor storyline really directly followed the whole Gore the God Butcher run in the Thor comic books. They then went into the Mighty Thor run, and that's when Jane Foster came down with cancer, and Thor was incredibly upset about it, and didn't know what to do, and Thor had at that time given up Mjolnir because he felt he wasn't worthy after what happened with Gore the God Butcher. And then Mjolnir and Jane Foster going through her cancer treatments felt like something, she was being drawn to something, and it was Mjolnir speaking to her. And eventually Mjolnir came to her, and when she grabbed Mjolnir, it basically turned her into the Mighty Thor, and I won't say cure her cancer, but basically made her recover. She became, healthy, strong woman, Thor, basically, the Mighty Thor. So it sounds like they're doing that same storyline.
Yeah, they've confirmed
and how they explained how she got cancer in the MCU. There's lots of ways she can do that. They can do that with her.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're going with that storyline.
Yeah.
And again, we saw that scene at the end of the teaser trailer with her holding Mjolnir, the fractured Mjolnir that had been reformed or reforged. That looked super cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be a cool movie. The teaser trailer had 24 million views within the 24-hour period. It broke some record or something.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's going to be huge. Yeah, I'm looking forward to them.
Let's just hope Taika Waititi finishes the movie.
Yeah,
and then we can get it on time.
God, I heard he's still doing reshoots.
I don't know. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. They got time though. They're good.
All right,
they're good.
Let's get into the topic of the week, Professor.
All right, so this week for the top of the week, we're going to talk about kind of the future of the Spiderverse. So I think we talked about when we did our Morbius movie review. Titanium and I spoke about our doubts about the future of the Sony Spiderverse. So Sony
doubts, confusion, questions.
Yeah, just the end credit scenes and everything else. What the hell is going on? Sony owns Spider-Man, the rights to Spider-Man, and all of the ancillary characters. All of the villains in the Spider-Man kind of cadre of villains, and then pseudo characters around the side and everything. There's a bunch of them. Sony has the rights to all those, and we know they had some plans, but we really weren't sure what their plans were. Well, Sony came out with a pretty big announcement this week, and really something that we haven't had from Marvel in a long time. They basically came out and said, "Here are our plans, and here's the slate of movies we have coming out in the schedule." I wish we would get that from Marvel. We really haven't gotten anything from Marvel.
Not in a while.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's coming out on Disney Plus and when. We don't know what's coming out in movies and what movies are coming out in the time slots that they've already announced. But Sony came out and said, here are our plans. Here's basically the next 2 years, right? Now, the one piece of news that was disappointing was they announced a delay to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So this is the animated movie that's the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which from my opinion is one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made. It's number 1 or number 2 on my list of Spider-Man movies ever made. It's fantastic. It is so well made, so well done.
Great story.
Oh yeah, just entertaining and well paced. It's just really, really well done. Well, a highly anticipated sequel was scheduled to come out this October, and we were really excited about it. Well, they announced that that's been delayed. So Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse,
Part 1 and 2.
Well, the first part is now coming out in June of 2023.
Yeah.
And the second part is coming out in March of 2024. So we'll get them kind of less than a year apart from each other, but the first part, so this is being filmed, it's being made in it's a two-part movie. The first part, originally you said that they dropped the part 1 and part 2 from the titles.
Yeah.
But the first part was supposed to come out this October. It's now been pushed to next June 2nd, and the second one will be coming out in March of 2024. So we're going to get them within a year of each other, but that's really nice that we'll get one in June of next year, and then the next one will come in March of 2023.
Yeah.
Or 2024. So that's great. So that was announced. Disappointing that it's been pushed back, but at the same time, probably for lots of good reasons. Again, some of the confusion about what's going on in the Sonyverse, that's probably good. So we do know that Kraven the Hunter
has been filming.
Right, it's been filming, and that is scheduled now to come out in January 13th of 2023, so next January. So we're going to be getting that movie next January. So that's pretty exciting. You're not sure?
No.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important for us. I would anticipate that the first trailer or teaser of that movie comes out this fall.
Yeah.
And they probably need to hit a home run with the teaser to get people excited about what it's going to be like.
Especially after Morbius. I mean,
yeah.
And Morbius was an okay movie, guys. It's just the end credits. We're not so bad. And that speaks volumes of what's happening at Sony right now.
And the last piece of news, so we've heard a number of casting rumors and casting announcements for a movie that Sony's making called Madam Webb. So that movie is now got a date. It's going to be July 7th, 2023. So next July, we're going to be getting that movie in the theaters. And this is a live-action movie called Madam Web. And for those of you not familiar with who Madam Web is, she was in the comic books, but was most, I think, probably popular or popularized by the Spider-Man animated series that was in the late 90s, early 2000s, where really her character was used to explain what we now have come to know as the Spiderverse.
Yeah.
Is that there is Spider-Man is a Nexus being, right? There is a Spider-Man in every universe, right? There's a different version of Spider-Man in every universe, and there's
multiverse, yeah.
Right, but they're all connected. And we kind of got a little bit of that in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse,
with Miles Morales, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. That our version of Spider-Man dies, or the version of Spider-Man in Miles Morales' universe dies early on in the movie, and Miles now is the only version of Spider-Man left in his universe.
Right.
But then he finds out that there's a version of Spider-Man across multiple universes. There's Spider-Gwen, there's Spider-Ham, there's Spider-Noir, there's like a bunch of them. But there is a Spider, and they're all interconnected. And that Madam Web is the one who really kind of has insight into this Spider-Verse. She can kind of understand what's going on in all the different universes and what's going on with each of the different spider people.
She is like a blind Professor X.
Right.
Yeah. So she has those type of psychedelic, psychopathic.
She can see into. She basically has a mental connection to every Spider-Man in every universe.
Right.
And she used it in the animated series. She used it as a way to introduce Peter Parker, our Spider-Man, to other versions of himself in other universes. And we kind of saw, Iron Spider and a bunch of other ones from different universes that he was made aware of, and they had to kind of combine their powers to defeat different villains and enemies that were threatening the Spider-Verse. And so I don't know what they're going to do with the Madam Web movie. I have no idea what the plot's going to be.
Dakota Johnson has been cast as Madam Web.
Do we know she's playing Madam Web?
We know she's been cast in that movie. I think Madam Web.
Madam Web's
we don't know.
Old lady, so or at least that's the way she's portrayed in the comic books. So,
but at one point in the comic books, didn't she transfer her powers to a younger girl?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
good question.
Yeah, I think so. But who knows? I
don't know what they're going to do with that, but I do think Sony's doubling down. What this tells me is they're doubling down on the live-action Spider-Verse, right? So, again, we've been theorizing, do they bring Andrew Garfield back as Spider-Man in a movie in some kind of role somewhere? Is there a future for Tobey Maguire? We don't know any of this, and hopefully that movie will explain what their plans are. Are we going to see a version of Miles Morales at some point in time? Are we going to see Spider-Gwen? I mean, we've seen them in the animated series, but we don't know if we're going to see them in live action, and that would be the place that we would kind of get the explainer of what's going on. All we know for sure is Tom Holland has signed on for another 3-picture deal with Sony and Marvel. So the sharing agreement between Tom Holland and Sony and Marvel is in place for 3 more movies. Yeah. So we know that, but we don't know.
You can't shelf Tom Holland. You got to.
He'll be fine. But we don't know what's going on with Andrew Garfield. We don't know what's going on with any of the other. We have a feeling they're making a Sinister Six movie and developing kind of a group to fight against Spider-Man. So, and who knows? Maybe eventually he'll have to call upon his other Spider friends to kind of help him. Right? Who knows? We don't know.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Professor.
Sure.
Let's ring the bell.
All right. Well, that's
great show.
That's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, hit us up via email, supertalkpodcast@outlook.com or @supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
And we out.
Thanks, YouTube.
Thanks, YouTube. Enjoy this song.